全民英检中高级单字，跟着波罗波美一起练习。追踪波罗英文脸书与 IG， 不定时更新限时动态，单字补给满满满。话不多说，进入今天的主题吧。
Cottage, cottage, cottage.
名词，农庄、小屋、别墅。
Tina has a cottage on the coast. Tina has a cottage on the coast. There is a tiny cottage on the hilltop. There is a tiny cottage on the hilltop. Dwelling, dwelling, dwelling.
名词，住宅、住处。
I spend some time in my friend's dwelling. I spend some time in my friend's dwelling. Compared to a human dwelling, the tiny cottage looked more like a doll's house. Compared to a human dwelling, the tiny cottage looked more like a doll's house. Estate, estate, estate.
名词，庄园、地产。
Tom lives in his country estate. Tom lives in his country estate. She owns a large estate in England. She owns a large estate in England. Edifice, edifice, edifice.
名词，大厦、雄伟的建筑物。
There is a huge Gothic edifice in the center of the city. There is a huge Gothic edifice in the center of the city. The library on the corner is the oldest edifice in the county. The library on the corner is the oldest edifice in the county. Tenement, tenement, tenement.
名词，廉价公寓、住屋。
He lived in an old tenement block. He lived in an old tenement block. My uncle rented a tenement and there is a shop in the basement. My uncle rented a tenement and there is a shop in the basement. Tenant, tenant, tenant.
名词，房客。
The wardrobe was left by the previous tenant. The wardrobe was left by the previous tenant. Each tenant will be required to sign a lease. Each tenant will be required to sign a lease. Lodger, lodger, lodger.
名词，房客。
Are you looking for a lodger? Are you looking for a lodger? She earns her living by taking in lodgers. She earns her living by taking in lodgers. Rent, rent, rent.
当动词，意思是出租、租借；当名词，意思是租金。
How much is the rent per month? How much is the rent per month? John has a villa that he rents to tourists. John has a villa that he rents to tourists. Charter, charter, charter.
动词，包租、租。
They chartered 2 buses for the trip. They chartered 2 buses for the trip. My father chartered a boat for deep-sea fishing. My father chartered a boat for deep-sea fishing. Lease, lease, lease.
当动词用，意思是 出租。当名词用，意思是租契、租约。
The lease will expire on January 29th. The lease will expire on January 29th. They decided to lease the office to another company. They decided to lease the office to another company.
相信透过解说以及例句示范如何使用单字，大家对于以上的内容都有基本的了解了。接下来换你来试试看吧。选择题，请选出最适当的答案。时间到，大家都完成作答了吗？一起来对答案吧。
The thief hid in an abandoned dwelling. The thief hid in an abandoned dwelling.
小偷藏在一栋废弃的房子里。
The estate is surrounded by high walls. The estate is surrounded by high walls.
这座庄园的周围都是高墙。
His grandpa lives in an old cottage. His grandpa lives in an old cottage.
他的祖父住在一栋老旧小屋里。
You have to pay your rent tomorrow. You have to pay your rent tomorrow.
你明天必须付房租。
He walks past a gloomy tenement building. He walks past a gloomy tenement building.
他走过一栋阴暗的公寓大楼。
The company's headquarters was an impressive edifice. The company's headquarters was an impressive edifice.
这间公司的总部是一栋令人印象深刻的建筑。
This handsome boy is our new lodger. This handsome boy is our new lodger.
这位英俊的男孩是我们的新房客。
For not paying his rent, the tenant was evicted. For not paying his rent, the tenant was evicted.
那位房客因不支付房租而被赶走。
She would like to charter a plane. She would like to charter a plane.
她想包一架飞机。
Can you explain all the lease terms to me? Can you explain all the lease terms to me?
你能向我解释所有的租约条款吗？
I can barely pay my rent. I can barely pay my rent.
我几乎付不起房租。
We lease all our computer equipment. We lease all our computer equipment.
我们出租我们所有的电脑设备。
透过以上的练习，希望能帮助你更认识单字。以上就是本集内容。Thanks for watching. 感谢你的收看，我们下部影片见。See ya!